Greetings, ladies and germs. Nice to see ya. My name is Dustin Cormier, and you're watching another episode of How to Rock Astrology. Thanks so much for hanging out with me today. In today's episode, we have decided to discuss the nature of what we call Capricorn moon. The moon in the sign of Capricorn. Now, for those who are watching, I am a tropical Vedic astrologer, and I use tropical Western measurements, but I apply generally Vedic philosophy to what I generally discuss in these videos. Although, for these moon videos, I actually lean really hard on the texts of Western authors. I usually begin by talking about my own spiel on this particular moon sign. Throughout the video, eventually, when we get to it, we're going to discuss Stephen Royo's Chart Interpretation Handbook. We're going to discuss Astrology, a Cosmic Science by Isabel M. Hickey, what they say about the moon in Capricorn, and then we're going to talk about Erotic Astrology by Phyllis Vega, to give us a more lighthearted glimpse of what the juicy nature of Capricorn moon is typically like when they are juicy. And they, like anybody else, can be juicy. Although these Western authors often, I think, really bite off a lot on the moon being in a place of kind of detriment by being in the sign of Capricorn, which is generally because it's in the opposite from its natal owned house. Cancer owns the planet, the moon. And Cancer is a sign of itself. It's the mula tricona of the moon, in a way. It's a sign of the moon's home. So Capricorn is the furthest placed from that home. Well, we have to understand that a bit of information that I'd like to give from the Vedic world is that basically when it comes to pure dignity, which means the moon being in the sign of something that's either an enemy or a friend, the moon here is not in the sign of an enemy because the moon is the one planet in Vedic astrology that does not have enemies. There's an interesting mystical reason for this. Essentially, the moon is the part of ourselves which we most inherently are from our perspective on Earth. I'm sure lots of people will disagree with me when I say this, but essentially, the moon can't hate its own energy. It can't necessarily hate itself. Now, there are plenty of people with Saturn conjunct the moon that, that's a moon that, really has... Life has caused such a person to neglect themselves before doing anything in life. With the moon in Capricorn, there is an energy that abides by neglecting the personal needs in order to get done ambitious projects. But the moon is not an enemy to... Saturn is not technically an enemy to the moon. The reason why Saturn starves the moon when it's conjunct the moon is because Saturn conjuncts any planet that it starves. That's just the nature of Saturn. There's a need that always overcomes the capacity for that planet to express its energy. This is not the same as the moon in Capricorn. The moon in Capricorn is an entirely different energy from the moon conjunct Saturn. Moon in Capricorn is, it might be conveyed that there's like a darkness, a solemn, dignified simplicity, a protector energy that wants to protect those around it rather than being kind of spontaneous and joyful like we might see in other moon placements. But this protector nature, this ambitious nature, this desire to get the important things out of the way first, is what allows this moon to enjoy not having an agenda to have to deal with. These are people who people love, especially people with earthy placements for whatever reason. This is a person who's always making sure that everything is kind of getting done, that everybody can enjoy what the Capricorn moon person does. So a lover of a Capricorn moon is someone who's going to appreciate this person for being there to take care of business, to take care of what needs to get done. And they kind of like, they're unapologetic about being the type of person who wants to make sure that they get everything done. They don't expect more of themselves, especially if the moon has other ways of conveying strength. I'm going to kind of explain that a moment, because right now we're just talking about the signs. There is a failure in a lot of YouTube astrology that just talks about like the cookbook nature of these planetary energies, and I'm doing that technically right now, but I like to kind of at least make the space for this caveat that there's so much more going on in the moon and with any planet than just its sign alone. In the moon's case, for example, I will say that this can be conveyed as a difficult placement, because the moon, by being in Capricorn, is still only 2 signs away from Scorpio, where it's debilitated. And this kind of shows that there is a self-centered instinct, a lonely kind of instinct. But the moon in Capricorn is it's the 3rd sign away from Scorpio moon. So it can be a little bit introverted. It can be a little cold and gruff. And it can be ambitious, which is not necessarily what the moon is designed to do. The moon is supposed to be one of the arbiters of what's called the Svadhisthana chakra, the 2nd chakra, the water chakra. And what the moon is supposed to do is lean instinctively into the support of the life energy, the life grid, the energy grid of life and love that's all around it, by water, by being compassionate for its own sake in order to help others, so that they can be helped. The image that's conveyed here is that if you're going, climbing up the mountain of your sun path, because the sun and Mars and Jupiter are essentially what we're trying to do with our energy. The moon conveys who we want to be and who we want to be with on our path to conveying what we want to do from our 9 to 5 energy. The sun is what we do. It's the king of the chart. But the king can't go too far without its queen. This being an ambitious, dry moon, by being in a Saturn sign, by being close to Scorpio moon, where it's debilitated, there are some negative connotations to all these things. Essentially, it kind of, what the moon is supposed to do is it's supposed to make itself work smarter, not harder. The moon in Capricorn wants to work harder, and it wants to do it with its own way, and then come to the relationship and say, hey, baby, look what I just did. Look at all the hard work that I just put into this thing. I did it myself. I was thinking about you the whole time. I was thinking about how this would progress and further our relationship. It's a gift. It's like a dog bringing you like a bone or like a dead animal to your front step and saying, here you go. And it's, at that level, it's kind of descriptive in some deep way of Capricorn moon, because they get very excited to show you this thing. And meanwhile, the person receiving that gift is like, ugh, another dead bird. God damn it. So Capricorn moon can have this detached perspective on what their partner might ultimately want, because they have been busy from the beginning trying to develop security for themselves. And they think about how they can develop security for themselves in an intelligent, smart, Saturnian way. But they do it through, like, it's an ambitious instinct to protect themselves first. And that's why being close to Scorpio is really the root of where this comes from. The moon in Aquarius is also ruled by Saturn. It's also, ambitious like this, but it equalizes its instinctive ambition that makes it kind of isolated and individuated. Aquarius moon is a little bit more open to sharing, securing of itself with other people. Capricorn's a little closer to Scorpio moon. It's cardinal Earth. it's kind of instinctively wants to be in a position of authority or developing security through something that it does. And that's the working harder. You know, ideally, if the moon is in Taurus, it's thinking about how can I secure my relationship with my partner by doing less? Or shall we say, by getting greater security for less effort, by being smart about sharing consciousness in a mutual way, in a mutual regard for what the other person's security paradigm works like. And this Taurus moon builds its relationships on understanding the mutual security paradigm that would be enjoyed by both people and caters to that right from the beginning. You know, we can see how the moon is supposed to operate by envisioning how it works when it's exalted. When the moon is in Capricorn, it kind of thinks about how it can contribute to a relationship first through its own very kind of rigidly crystallized way in some ways. And then it adopts what the partner says in order to merge with the partner based on what it instinctively is first. Although I will say that this is a moon which is not as close to Scorpio as like Sagittarius or Libra. It's getting away from debilitation, which means this is a moon that is opening up. By thinking smart, it recognizes that it's kind of like a general at war, and a good general listens to its subordinates and actually listens to the ideas of its team, so it can be furthered in the information that it needs to live the best security that it needs and that it wants. Now, you know, in my Sag moon video and in my Scorpio moon video, like, it doesn't necessarily listen as much. Those moons don't. Capricorn moon can listen because it wants to secure itself. And the Saturnian aspect of this moon recognizes that 2 hands are better than 1, 2 heads are better than 1, many hands make light work. So they will invite the people into their lives who they've made sure have a real solid, like, for the future security foundation for the person. And they can be soulful people. These are people who kind of are not too much about the superficial aspects that of a partner that some other moon signs might be conveyed by, or they might desire. But the Capricorn moon can eliminate good partners because of superficial seeming tendencies that, if they had been more patient, they might have learned that partner who they let go of because it doesn't jive with the Capricorn moon, as time goes on, they might feel like they acted on an instinct to cut something out that could have actually been amended with patience and time. Ultimately, really, the Capricorn moon is looking for someone because it's still close to Scorpio. So it wants to find someone. It can be a little insecure. They want to make sure that they're with someone who's not going to be like, you know, some lover, especially if this moon has got the lesser ill qualities that I often talk about. This could be a person who looks for a partner who is not like better than them. They want to be equal, or they want their partner kind of to be less mature than them, or to have things that they need to grow through, so that the Capricorn moon can say patiently, I love this person, they're functional, and if I abide by my mature, peaceful, functional psyche, that is, you know, this person can be psychologically minded in a certain way. Even if they're not conscious of it, they have an instinct to read what this person is going to, their psyche needs are. Because the moon in Capricorn is looking, it's like a prospector of a vehicle. They look inside the engine and they see, oh man, the transmission in this vehicle is placed in a way beside this belt that the transmission's going to eventually go at some point. And they're reading into that. In the same way with a relationship, if a person has some kind of emotional immaturity, Capricorn moon can be the person to be patient with it, be honest about it, and get through it with the person, instead of trying to go for the best partner that the Capricorn moon could possibly go for. And again, this is just mostly coming from the fact that it's close to Scorpio. He wants to put in effort into helping that person, and that's how they build security. Which is an admirable thing when they get whatever connection they want to get with whoever they get it with. It has to be said here that this is the way Capricorn moon is in a lot of ways. Although if they have a well-placed moon, they'll eventually learn the intelligence of the fact that of the moon. They'll learn the intelligence of everything that I'm talking about. You know, where they'll listen to themselves and they'll listen to their partner as an understanding of the best way for them to develop their own security. Because our partners help us to have security. It's a reflective thing. You know, I often make this metaphor that the king, what you want to do with your life from 9 to 5, is the king. And you have a desire to live your ambition, to live the life you want to live. The queen, the moon, is the consciousness of your limits, of what you can realistically sustain based on the family that you lived through during your childhood. And, you know, you can't say that you're going to have a dark, shitty childhood just because you have Capricorn moon, because there's so many things to convey strength for the moon, as we're going to kind of talk about. But what I want to say is that, you know, the king looks at his wife and says, hey, honey, you know, I really would just love, I'm just craving a nice big piece of blueberry pie. And the moon, the queen, says to the king, but honey, you know what that does to your blood sugar? The Capricorn moon person is like, the queen says, is trying to put, you know, allow the king to wreck himself a little bit and push himself with that blueberry pie to get that experience. But you know, instead of being the natural queen. I mean, honestly, ultimately, this is Capricorn moon, and they will be somebody who does say, don't eat the blueberry pie if it's going to do something bad to your blood sugar at that level. But at the archetypal level, what I'm trying to say is that the queen is supposed to give us a sentimental experience. It's the water of life that vitalizes us at an inspiration level, where, again, we want to drink water on the way up the mountain of what our sun represents. Now, the Capricorn moon is somebody who says, I'm going to bring less water so that there's less weight in my bag so I can go farther up the mountain. But as time goes on, they eventually learn that ultimately they should have just brought the same amount of water that is the right amount of water. Don't be too conservative with giving yourself the things that are going to carry you farther at an emotional level. This is a moon that can learn this the hard way over time and get to be 40 years old and too old to have kids and realize at that moment that sentimental experiences are important, you know. But really how this is ultimately going to happen is whether all the other parts of the moon's health are also ill. You know, there's so many things that, because we're just talking about the moon sign, and it's only the moon sign. You know, the moon being closer to being full gives it strength. The moon being waxing as opposed to waning gains strength. The moon can have strength according to what's called Shadbala in Vedic astrology, where there's so many things that can convey whether the moon has strength. You know, even the sun being closer to, I believe, Capricorn can give the moon strength. That's called a certain thing. It's called Ayanabala in Shadbala. Shadbala is a combination of many different quantifying astronomical facts for each planet. As well, the moon can have aspects from its friends, Mercury and the sun, which would drive a necessary feeling that it's important for me to not only feel like I lived my life sun's path for myself, but to share that experience and to amplify that experience with a partner who appreciates the work that I do. Capricorn moon can feel like they've got an emotional hole that all of their ambition will never fill, no matter how much they put into it. Now, If the moon is not close to full, if it's waning, if it's ill in Shadbala, if it's conjunct a malefic, like, if it's combust by the sun, or if it's conjunct Mars, all these kind of things that can give the moon afflictions, then yeah, this person can really cater to what leans towards possible negativities here by being so close to Scorpio and by being in the vicinity of dry Saturn. But really, being in the as a Vedic person, I want to say that the moon being in Capricorn is not as debilitating in its own right as Western writers tend to convey. It's really more the fact that it's so close to Scorpio that it gives it this internalized ambition, which really any person can understand how your instincts in the compulsion of your mind to get security is getting in the way of seeing all the opportunities available to you, especially if you learn at some point in your life to meditate, to listen to something like, for example, the sound of a river or the sound of birds. Meditate and spend about 10 or 15 minutes observing objectively how your thoughts burp up in a compulsive way that's not necessarily your divine intelligence, but rather the scripted programming of your procreative survival instincts to get good things to survive. If you can see above the compulsive nature of your mind, then you can cater to any debilitation or difficulty with the moon and sit and reside in the space with a partner who's explaining things to you that can help give you what the general wants, which is more information about having its army better protected. If you can understand the importance of that and you can meditate, really, you can do anything, in my personal opinion. Now, with all this being said, ultimately we have to dig that Capricorn moon is somebody, because they're not in an enemy's sign, they are going to abide by an energy which can be appreciated, especially if it's benefic, like if it's close to full, if it's waxing, like I said, then it'll especially be appreciated for being this type of person who enjoys being appreciated for initiating and getting the things that needs to get done, by being reliable, by being responsible, by getting the rent paid. I will say that another huge part of how to quantify this energy is the placement of Saturn. If your Saturn's having difficulty in your chart, then of course the moon trying to use, Saturn is the dispositor of the moon by being in Capricorn. So if Saturn is off and it's not doing very well, it's one of the earthy signs and it's going to have difficulty. Really, it's good to have at least some kind of strength in any one of the three planets that rule the water, the air and earth signs. Venus rules Libra and Taurus, air and earth. Mercury rules Gemini and Virgo, air and earth. Saturn rules Aquarius and Capricorn, air and earth. So for this person, having something that will allow you to communicate and share with others is ultimately going to make you see the importance of not doing everything yourself, but by still retaining your boundary and doing the things that are important to you, so that you can be appreciated for being the person who does things for the relationship. Because it's a beautiful, juicy energy, especially a very well-placed Capricorn moon is somebody who typically only needs to get done the things that they need to get done in order to be happy. And they'll find things that are realistic, functional ways of keeping themselves happy and inspired by having a scripted plan for hobbies and important things that they want to do, as well as scripted plans for opening themselves up to new potential worlds outside of the scripted plan. The moon kind of has this juicy adaptation energy at its core. Now, as we'll read, this moon, the moon is really about adaptation at a lot of levels. And this is a moon that can be a bit rigid in the way that it, how it tries to get out of its own rigid consciousness. Really, it takes a lover that's a bit Capricornian, a bit firm and stern and objective and unemotional, to tell the Capricorn moon person that you are going to burn yourself out, only being closed off and ambitious in your life, if you don't open up to what your lover thinks, or your lover's ideas, or to even just letting it go, just dropping it and being sentimental and being vulnerable. This is somebody who can have a rigid vulnerability. But ultimately, the moon, the liquidy, adaptable moon, does something to Capricorn, just like Capricorn does something to the moon. Capricorn is a sign, and everybody has the sign of Capricorn, even if there's no planets in it. It's a part of everyone's energy field. It's the knees. It's everything. It's a part of the channel of the Saturn inside of all of us. By having the moon here, there is a crackle of watery adaptation that is happening for Capricorn. But it's your experiences that are going to force that. It's your experience of trying to be rigid that the universe will kind of blow you up a little bit by showing you the limits of how introverted, how insecure, how isolating you can be if you do feel the need to go on that path. When this moon energy is at its maturest and best, it's a fun, sociable, open, plucky energy, but it doesn't speak like, it's not prolifically, it says the right things, and it prides itself. It wants to be attracted. It wants to attract by not saying the wrong thing or something obnoxious in the wrong moment. So this is the quiet type who, when they say the right thing, it's the very much the right thing, typically when this moon energy goes well. Now, that's sort of my kind of open-ended Vedic spiel, my caveat on the nature of this energy. Now, from here, I'd like to give a little bit of writings from some other authors to give us more of the consciousness that we would expect from Capricorn Moon. He's a Western author, so they do give a little bit of that rigidness energy. Keep in mind what I said about the Vedic idea that the moon being in Capricorn is not in the sign of an enemy. Really, Saturn's placement is going to show whether the crass shell of insecurity is going to come up in a negative, truly negative way, as well as the moon's own, even more so than Saturn's placement, is whether the moon is waxing, if it's closer to the full moon, if it has positive aspects from its friends, Mercury and the Sun, if it's got strong Shadbala, if it's close to the 4th house cusp, which gives it what's called Digbala. It's a very important factor. All of these things will help negate the crystallizing energy that we read about in most Western texts about the moon. With that being said, just keep it as a grain of salt, because the energy that these authors do describe is still there. I would say it's not necessarily as extreme, but just by being in Capricorn. The fact that it's still close to Scorpio moon is what gives me the need to say that there is a bit of that instinctively there, that every Capricorn moon is going to have to work out no matter how well the moon and Saturn is placed. So this is Astrology, a Cosmic Science by Isabella M. Hickey. We're going to do a little dive into the moon in Capricorn, which is described as being in its detriment in this book, just particularly because Cancer is the ruling sign, and this is the furthest placed from Cancer by sign for the moon to be. What we read is that the moon in Capricorn is a poor place for the moon, and especially so for a female. As I understand it, this is mostly it just comes from the fact that women having the feminine sign in such a stern sign can make them very kind of intense. Because the women wear their moon and men wear their sun in a certain way. And the moon is supposed to be open and juicy. By the typical arrangement given in most old occult systems, women tend to have one of their strengths as being their ability to be honest, but also to be receptive to the other person and to make their hard honesty hit the other person in a way that the other person doesn't feel insulted. They listen to how the other person needs to hear their hard, mechanical level of psychological advice that they are often wanting to be appreciated for sharing. But Capricorn has a way of instinctively saying it first, and then the moon in Capricorn will kind of say it first and then say, I'm sorry I had to be so hard on you and say this in this way, but it was important for you to hear. And the other person is like, well, fucking great. Like they'll react to the cold emotional nature of the moon in Capricorn, especially a man dealing with a woman in this way. Ultimately, a woman will learn how to balance that if they're, if there's an intelligence that teaches them the importance of delivering their hard advice in a soft way for a man who needs it. Plus, ultimately, I think that any woman with the moon in Capricorn will eventually attract a partner who can take the way that this person wants to be appreciated for their advice. Because there are men with earthy placements who will be seeking this kind of thing, right? This is a moon that we read. This is a moon that tends to work against itself. They're conservative and they have strong ambitions. The conservatism is part of the reason why it can work against itself. Again, it's like, instead of saying, I want to bring enough water up the mountain that I can drink it the whole way up, they'll say, I'm going to bring less water so it weighs me down less. But it ends up getting halfway up the mountain saying, I wish I had vitalized and given myself more regenerative, sentimental water on my path up the mountain, right? The moon is like the infant stage. When you look at the stages of the planets, moon is from 0 to 2. Mars is from 2 to 6. Mercury is from 6 to 12. Venus is from 12 to 32. Jupiter is from 32 to 52. And then the sun is 52 to 60. And then Saturn is 60 till death. The moon, being the place from 0 to 1, is like an infant who wants to grab and just get the titty, wants to just get the good things. That's the water that's going to help you carry up the mountain. This is a child that might not instinctively want to need external things. It's partly coming from the fact that the moon is close to Scorpio here too. Scorpio is debilitated because the moon is supposed to be open to all the opportunities and energies around it. The moon in Scorpio says, I don't want it. I don't want to need external things, which means the responsibility to be vitalized is within themselves. And they just instinctively find less positive opportunities in life. Capricorn moon can suffer from the same thing with this conservatism. This is a person with strong ambitions. They can have a power complex. The security of their subconscious lies in authority, as we read. Really, it's just the fact that they're on top of things in a situation. Security, contest is the bread of life for Capricorn moon in a lot of ways. They want to win recognition as an important and powerful person. And this gives them internal security in a lot of ways, because that's what Saturn does. And this is the position of Saturn that's more primal, being in Capricorn, the cardinal earth sign. Saturn, moon in Aquarius isn't quite the same way. They need to watch a tendency to harden the ego complex in a shell of self-centered ambition. Ultimately, all these things I wouldn't say are as extreme as this Western author is giving it, and you can be moved out of it. Scorpio moon is worse for all these things. And Scorpio moon, no matter what, has a hard time getting out of it. Capricorn moon thinks intelligently and can see how these self-defeating tendencies can be unintelligent for what the moon is trying to do. It's like a army that wants to win. You got to give your army all that it needs to be its best. This might be a hard drill sergeant who says, okay, no drinking on this next excursion. You know, even though we all want to come home and drink and be merry in order to relive our spirits, we're not going to do that. We're going to get a good sleep and then go and slay it again the next day. But the Capricorn moon will eventually understand the importance of giving its army that respite, that drinking moment, and what have you, more than Scorpio moon will. This person can have rigid and crystallized feelings. They're not an intrinsically, instinctively happy person. It's partly because Capricorn has that winter solstice dry, ready to get through the long haul energy. And they're not always sympathetic and emotional, although, again, they can be if there's other things supporting that in the chart. One thing that is for sure that this Western text is right on is that the parental influence on this person is going to be very strong. What happened with the father and the mother, their relationship, whether it was healthy, and the relationship between the father and the person and the mother and the person is going to deeply be embedded in their psyche complex. And if you are a Capricorn moon and you find this is the case with you, you know, these days getting a therapist is less sort of what's the word, looked down upon than it used to be. Everyone in their dog these days gets a therapist to work these kinds of things out. If you feel it's important to you, keep in mind that especially if your moon is not well placed in other ways and you don't have a good water Svadhisthana chakra, it might be good to go to a therapist or at least talk with somebody about the influence that your parents had on your upbringing and on your childhood psyche. Subconscious fears in this person need to be brought to the surface and dissolved through understanding. And a good partner will do this for you. And if you're intelligent and you have good water placements in your chart, you will understand the smartness, the intelligence of the water Svadhisthana chakra being a part of the whole metaphysical law of human energy. You'll understand that emotions are rational. Even though thinking emotionally is not rational, the emotions that come through can be rationally and logically quantified as a part of the human mechanism of health and well-being. And you will understand this, and if you are willing enough to do it, you'll find somebody who helps you crack your defenses, and that will be a good thing for you. In a male chart, this is a placement that will attract a serious and quiet type of partner. Now, it seems to me that Stephen Arroyo's Chart Interpretation Handbook kind of says more of the same when it comes to this Capricorn moon personality. These are the interpretive guidelines for the moon in Capricorn, and it's kind of rolling with the same ideas, just in slightly different ways. The moon in Capricorn reacts with self-control and determination. Sometimes they act automatically with severe negativity. They have a need to manipulate the world and others to get on top of it all in order to feel secure, comfortable, and to achieve one's goals. They can set aside personal concerns to fulfill duties, for better or worse. The indications here tend to convey that it often, if acting by instinct, it will lean towards negative, where you fulfill a million duties, which are always forever too many in the material world, because the material world is multiplicitous, but spirit is singular. This emotional wellness and soul are singular within. So there's always going to be a million duties to facilitate. The balance to find is when we meditate and notice how the compulsion at a survival level to do a million useless duties stops us from seeing opportunities to have worthwhile duties in the soul. Meditate, see it objectively, and then it won't necessarily be a problem. These people have a controlled response to experience, for better or worse. Again, when you think about it, having a controlled response to experience essentially means you have a filter that is causing you to not be open to what reality gives you, and that is not the best situation for the moon. This is someone who cautiously projects authoritative, determined energy. They feel comfortable in the role of provider and protector, and they habitually take control of situations, which can feel heavy at some level, kind of for everyone involved. But I've been in bands with people with Capricorn moon, and it's sort of securing knowing that somebody is looking at that bottom line. So keep that in mind when you read about these energies conveyed about Capricorn moon. This dominant emotional need to be on top or to be an authority can limit the capacity for intimacy and emotional nurturing. To be intimate and to actually be vulnerable enough, to nurture and be nurtured. And, these books are saying this for a reason. I would say probably most Capricorn moons in childhood will have these tendencies. And it's the ones that are well placed, that have other water things that give them a sense of the importance of sharing and being vulnerable, and having the intelligence to understand how being in your own shell stops you from getting important data about your emotions. The Capricorn moons who have support to their moon and to their Venus are the ones who will eventually learn the intelligence of cracking through your defenses by somebody else, even if they're not necessarily a perfect genius and they're a perfect person to help you. Sometimes all people want to do is share what you do for them. Just help you and listen. Just listen to your emotions, listen to your fears and your subconscious fears. If you are willing to crack through and tell people these things, they can tell you that it's understandable for you to have that fear based on this experience that you had in your childhood. But those things that you're holding on to from childhood, have you ever tried thinking about how they might not be real, or they might not be as important than you think, or that you can get through them, that you can be loved? Because Capricorn moon is such an ambitious person, they often think that, I might not be lovable enough. What do I have to convey? The only thing I know how to do is win chess, and in a hard way. But, you might not realize that there are some people who will probably appreciate how humorously dry and real you can be. I'll tell you, I know a few Capricorn moons in my life. I have Rahu and Uranus and Neptune in Capricorn. Having Rahu there, I splinter at the way that Capricorn moon can be so hard and real about things. Even they can have they're so rock and roll about when they are blunt and they say something about a person especially. There's a way that Capricorn moons have where they'll say something about somebody, where they've made a character assessment, and they'll say something about the person that they don't like, and it's so real. It's all the neurotic parts of a person that other people can just sort of move around. Capricorn moon can abide by it just like anybody else can, but they will often just be so blunt and honest about it, depending on other things. I know a lot of Capricorn moons who will just do this and say what they think about someone, and it's always the wryest, realest explanation of the energy that they don't like in that person. So that is to say that there are people who can love the fact that you enjoy doing things that are ambitious in this way, and that are, I know it can be difficult for you to just hang out, but really, Capricorn moon really does have the capacity to just hang out. But it's only after they've done a bunch of auspicious, ambitious stuff. Then they can kind of be lazy and chill, quote unquote lazy. That being the reflection of their ambition. I don't mean lazy, really. You're not a lazy person, typically, with this placement. But when you like to hang out, it's like, I don't want to do anything because I put so much effort into all the protecting and all the other things that I do. And it seems to you, perhaps, like that's not a language of love. That's just a language of nothingness. But there are people who will appreciate your ability to be abysmal to just do nothing, to just kind of hang and watch TV, or to kind of go for a walk, or to just be quiet and inside yourself and not necessarily need to say a million things about a million things. You can have a partner who's sensual, perhaps, just wants to hold your hand and say, I'm here with you. I'm also like this. And I don't want to make much ado about nothing, just like you do. You know, so everybody can be loved through their own love language. It's just easy to not see it when you are somebody whose instinctive love language is so bare bones. But there are people who will appreciate everyone's dimension of every side of things. Now, it is possible, again, that you've got an afflicted moon or afflicted Saturn, and it makes it difficult for you to just chill and do nothing in this way, or to chill and work hard on some kind of hobby that you enjoy doing and sharing that with your partner. In which case, you can work it out, meditate, ask your partner how you can be more involved with your sentimental experiences with them, or seek help from a therapist. You know, there are many ways to, for you to intelligently get the feeling that you're not boring if you do feel like that. But you got to kind of use your Capricorn moon and put in ambitious effort to finding ways to make yourself more enjoyable to people. I think you probably already are, and so does your partner. But if you got to tell it to yourself in order for you not to feel insecure about being like a bump on the do it. Use your intelligence, use that ambition, and get what you need to make yourself fill in all the emotional gaps that you got to fill in. Now, that was my spiel coming from Stephen Arroyo's Chart Interpretation Handbook. Last one we're going to talk about here is Erotic Astrology by Phyllis Vega. We're going to talk about the nature of the moon in Capricorn being in a lovemaking bed setting. How does the moon in Capricorn, when it is letting go of the world, coming down to earth and getting into bed and snuggling up and opening its eyes and being fun and rock and roll, how does it all come out? This is coming from Erotic Astrology by Phyllis Vega. It's the moon in Capricorn in bed. When moon in Capricorn is aroused, the strongly sexed lunar goat is capable of intense and sustained ardor. So real, one thing that can be said about this person is, again, the moon is not supposed to work harder. You should work smarter, where you don't have to feel like you have to drill this thing like a drill sergeant in order to feel like you're worthy of being loved. But you probably do want to be appreciated for the hard work that you roll up your sleeves and get down to work. And if you seek to be loved for that, the bed is one place that caters to that hardworking ambition. Although I will say that the more you can connect with your partner, the less it'll feel to both people like you're masturbating in front of the mirror. You know what I mean? But having this muscle to ambitiously do a good job is not a bad thing in the lovemaking department. Where lovemaking is concerned, you like to take it slow and get it right and work at love with the same diligence and dedication that you apply to other areas of your life. Your style of lovemaking, while respectful and refined, tends to be no nonsense, and you consider coquettish games to be a waste of time. I think it's more like kinky, sort of wearing different things, role-playing, these sorts of things. It's more moon in Aquarius and other placements. This is an earthy, sensual person who just wants to get along with someone who also doesn't expect too much, per se. Really, ultimately, love making and sex are supposed to be a bridge to bond soul to soul so that you feel better about being with each other. At some deep level, that's really what it's all about. Expanding into being many varieties of novelty in lovemaking, something that's enjoyable, but it shouldn't be the primary connection. The primary connection should come from the soul, and this variety and novelty should be an extension of that enjoyment of the security that these souls are bonding together through. Right? Nevertheless, whatever you lack in the romance department, you more than make up for in skill and sexual prowess, and probably knowledge as well. Despite your down-to-earth attitude towards sexuality, you can be vamped and seduced. Your ideal lover knows how to lure the horny goat out of hiding by creating an atmosphere of sensuality where you can relax and give full rein to your many erotic desires. Especially Saturn rules air. It rules the nervous system. And it's a tight nervous system. So when it's being invited to let go and release is generally the space where you can put yourself at your fullest, but also, there's an energy to this person that just likes the come hither kind of vibe. Come over to me, baby. I'm the sexy sex pot that you've been waiting to, come towards. And there's an energy of that, with the right partner, somebody who wants to be, this tends to be a domineering person that attracts like a submissive person, typically. Although, especially in the world of LGBTQ and trans and male, female, and everything in between, you can be both of these things. You can be a switch person. Everybody really can, you know what I mean? But by your nature, you're probably at some level going to enjoy being the shoulders back, shoulders up, come to me, baby kind of energy. And that is a valuable vibe for those who are looking for that kind of thing. It can be a really juicy consciousness when applied correctly. So, I hope you guys enjoyed that. I hope that was a delicious and informative reading experience with me. I'm Dustin Cormier. This is How to Rock Astrology. Let me know in the comments what you think about the way that I conveyed the energy of Capricorn Moon. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I hope you guys have enjoyed hanging out with me. Keep your eyes peeled because I always got more stuff coming out. Thank you so much for watching, and